you know, I was elected in 2009 originally, and then, you know, when I was elected to the State House in 2018, I kind of asked myself, I think, that same question. Well, what is it that a state representative does? And the most important thing it does, of course, is it votes on the various pieces of legislation that are filed in the State House here. You know, we're a bicameral form of government. There's a House and there's a Senate. It has to make it through both chambers in order to get to the governor, right? To do pretty much everything. And state government's pretty vast. So we touch on everything from healthcare to business to environmental issues to election laws and how our elections are operated and run, to regulatory pieces for education, regulatory pieces for early ed. It's really, really vast. So from a legislative standpoint of view, there's not a lot of things it doesn't touch, to be perfectly honest. And then a lot of other things we do is around like constituent services, right? So we work with folks in our community who have challenges accessing state government and helping them get to the right agency to get the questions answered that they might have. Or maybe they have a pending license at some agency that's caught up in red tape that they're trying to shake loose. So we help them with that. Maybe they have a passport issue, or maybe they have an issue with unemployment insurance or health insurance. So we do a lot of constituent service work as well. But the main thing that we do is on the legislative front, and we try our darndest to make sure that Massachusetts remains a great state to live, and that is kind of all encompassing, right? We got to have a great school system, like, you know, Massachusetts continues to be a national leader in education matters across our country. We're really, really fortunate for that. But we also have to make sure that Massachusetts continues to be affordable, right? I mean, that's a big, big piece of it as well. And part of being affordable is making sure that we have housing opportunities, right? That's something we're trying to deal with today. You know, I'm somebody who, I was fortunate to build a 2-family in 2007. So I was lucky, right? But I know that my tenants over the course of the last 15 years, 16 years, they've doubled their rents. That's how much money it's costing folks to live in our state. I think it's a huge, huge issue right now. So we've got to continue to increase the amount of housing available to folks to be able to hopefully slowly drive down the cost of housing. The cost of housing is a huge, huge challenge right now. And businesses look at that, right? Because one of the big things that businesses look at when they're setting up shop and where they're going to create their headquarters is how affordable is your state to live? Do people have a place to live, to rent, to own? Do they have access to childcare? If so, how expensive is it? Right? How expensive is healthcare? Right? All of those things play into business people when they're making decisions about where they're going to set up shop. So we're thinking about that all the time. So back in the fall, we passed one of the largest tax cuts in a generation in Massachusetts. And before your time, but in my time, Massachusetts was called Taxachusetts. And it got that name rightly so in a lot of ways, because we put in place a lot of policies that really deterred business from coming here and growing here. So we've been really aware of that and making sure that we don't do that again. So when we did the tax relief package, we helped renters, we helped seniors, we helped folks who had kids, we helped businesses. It was really, we helped people who were thinking about moving from the state to stay here through the state tax changes we made. We really tried to put a kind of an all-encompassing policy in place that made it clear to folks we want you to stay here and grow here and succeed here. Hopefully that answers your question.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How many hours do you sleep?
That's a good question. How many hours do I sleep? Well, I've got to preface that by telling you that I have a 2-year-old. So that means I don't sleep as much as I used to sleep, and I definitely don't sleep as much as I'm guessing all of you sleep. So I go to bed every night, probably about 9:30, and I'm up most days by 5:30. So whatever that works out to be.
That's good. That's really good.
But I go to bed early. It's a secret to life. Go to bed early.
Yeah.
Nothing good happens after 10 o'clock. You went for the most random question I've ever been asked.
I think it's important to understand like people's lifestyles.
It is. You're 100% right. But yeah, most of the time 9:30. My wife is usually about 8:30. Sitting next to me on the couch. She's busy, and we have daughters, and she does a lot of work with my daughter as well, plus a full-time job. So usually she's, let's put on this show, and then she's all cold, What are the questions you got?
How often do all the legislators and representatives meet all at once?
It's a good question. Varies completely. It really depends. So we'll have budget weeks, where we'll meet every single day. We'll have, this year, our session, well, this session, I should say, is gonna run from January of 2023 until July 31st of 2024. That's when our actual session runs. But it varies, so every week, every few weeks, it depends. Formal sessions are different than informal sessions. So informal sessions happen every 72 hours in the Commonwealth, according to the Constitution. Formal sessions, when you're voting, that can vary on a variety of factors, depending on when legislation is ready to be voted on, the time of the year, all that. Good question. What else we got?
What's your morning routine?
You're digging in, right? So caffeine, definitely. So most of the time I get up, again, I have a 2-year-old, so my day is get up in the morning, get my daughter out of bed, and go downstairs, get her some yogurt so she's nice and comfortable, watch a little Bluey, read the New York Times, do Wordle. Gotta do some Wordle.
That's really popular in our school.
You gotta do it, you gotta do it. Usually a crossword, usually the quick crossword on the New York Times is good. Yeah, the mini ones are great, right? So I'll do that, and then go upstairs, shower up, suit up, and get ready for the day. I'm out the door before 8 every day. I drop her at school, and wherever I'm heading, because this job, it varies. Sometimes you're heading to State House, sometimes you're heading to City Hall, sometimes you're heading to meeting in the district, sometimes you're heading to tour facilities and businesses to understand more about your district or about the Commonwealth at large. So it really depends, but a lot of days are varied, which is fun. 2 weeks ago I was out touring the State Police Academy in Western Massachusetts. A few months ago I went and I was touring battery manufacturing facilities in Watertown. So I serve as vice chair of the Telecommunications, Utilities, and Energy Committee. And basically what our committee is really tasked with is figuring out how to meet our climate goals to make sure we meet our climate goals heading towards 2050.
That's so important.
Yeah, so everything from energy efficiency standards to figuring out how we're gonna, power our homes, how we're gonna get clean energy from the shore over to different parts of our state that need it. Making sure they're not adversely impacting, environmental justice communities, all that. So yeah, it's fun. It's exciting.
What are your thoughts on nuclear?
It's a good question. So I think nuclear has to be part of our solution.
Carbon free.
It's carbon free. The challenge obviously is the waste, right? That's one of the real challenges we face of what do we do with it. I went up towards Seabrook probably about a year ago. That was very interesting, but it's kind of like walking into Homer Simpson's job a little bit because it's old. Most of our nuclear facilities are really, really old in America. But you look to France and other countries that are generating 75% of their energy by nuclear, and you say, gosh, they're doing something right here. So I think it needs to be part of the solution. We're really fortunate in Massachusetts that we live on the shore, and some people will call it the Saudi Arabia of wind, right? Because we can literally put all of our wind farms off of our coast, and then it's just the fact we need to get the clean energy to different parts of our state, right? But at the end of the day, it's going to take all kinds of different types of energy to meet our climate goals, so we can hopefully become carbon free and get off of oil, gas, and the rest. So it's going to take a while to do it. Transportation's a big piece. Transportation constitutes, depending on who you ask, between 40 and 60% of our carbon emissions. And then of course heating our homes, particularly in the Northeast, is a big piece of that as well. So that's where like heat pumps and things like that can come into play. Anybody have a heat pump in their home?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, so I have one in my home, which is great, but there's some challenges with it as well. Get below certain temperatures, doesn't operate the same. So we're working towards it, but it's a good question. What else you got?
So, I'm part of YCC, but how did you get involved in YCC?
What's YCC?
The Youth Climate Council.
Oh, okay. How did I get involved with it? I don't think I was involved with it. YCC?
YCC.
Yeah, was I involved with it? Was I? Okay, maybe I met with them? I don't know.
I feel like you've met with us.
Maybe I met with you guys, yeah. Probably because of the fact of my role in the
Yeah.
Telecommunications, Utilities, and Energy Committee. That's what I would say, that's
Yeah,
probably,
that's a good talk.
yeah, that was probably the reason for it.
So what about climate change makes it your like?
Well, if we don't get that right, it doesn't really matter if we get anything else right. You know, climate change is an enormous issue that we're facing, and I think we're behind the 8 ball, and we need to kind of be a little bit more rapid with a lot of the changes we're trying to make. And I think, you know, electric vehicles is a big piece of that. I think figuring out ways to energize our home through things like heat pumps is a big piece of that. If we could get those 2 pieces together, would solve a giant part. But beyond that, we got to figure out how to provide commercial opportunities for clean energy, because a lot of commercial operations, there's not enough power through electricity. A lot of commercial businesses are actually using gas and things like that to be able to generate the level of heat they need, or the amount of power they need. So we got to figure out that piece. But for me, you know, climate change is the game. You gotta find a way to meet our energy goals to make sure that we don't have a warming Earth, and that we don't have our all the other challenges with it, rising seas, and it doesn't take a lot to walk into Boston when you get rising seas and see what's going on, and the impact it can have across the globe. So yeah.
So I hear that you said like telecommunications, and what part of like what you do like entails with that? Like for example, like areas with like less access to,
Yeah.
do you like bring, I don't know,
It's a great question.
radio towers and that?
Yeah, so you guys are all COVID kids, right? You guys saw the challenges that happened when we closed down the world, right? And to your question, it's easy for us to not even think about this, but in Western Massachusetts, in 2020 when COVID hit, there was big areas of Western Massachusetts that didn't have high-speed internet. They couldn't Zoom if they wanted to. So we passed a variety of pieces of regulation that actually got different parts of our state high-speed internet to be able to allow these schools in particular to be able to have Zoom classes and the rest. So that was a big piece of what we did back then. Because again, we actually had kids driving to McDonald's or driving to Dunkin' Donuts and trying to park in parking lots to be able to connect to Wi-Fi, to be able to have access to do coursework. College students doing the same thing. So high-speed, I will say, the Infrastructure Act, the bipartisan infrastructure bill was passed by Congress, directed a lot of resources towards high-speed internet. We've been fortunate in Massachusetts, we pretty much closed that gap, but a lot of parts of our country still face that, you know, where they can't, you know, if something like COVID ever happened again, you know, we all hope it doesn't, but if something like that were to happen, how do you possibly provide an education for our kids, you know? And on the business front, you know, you guys know, I mean, that's what you're learning about right now. People are out there creating businesses online. I mean, that's a giant part of retail today. So if you live in a part of the country that doesn't have high-speed internet, how do you have a successful business? How do you, you know, if you're not online, if you don't have an opportunity to be able to buy the goods online, or be able to donate online, or be able to, you know, all those types of things. It's a huge part of the game. Yeah. All right, what else? I gotta shoot downstairs in a minute here. Are they downstairs, Nicole?
Yes.